Hello, good evening, and welcome to our last bulletin for the day. This is News at 10 on TV3 and on 3FM 92.7. We're broadcasting live from the News Hub at Adisawe Kanda in Accra. You can also follow our live stream on our Facebook page, facebook.com/news on TV3, and also on 3news.com. Let's begin with the major news highlights of the day. Senior high school applicants who have not been placed will have to wait until next year to enroll. 3 days after the deadline for placement, some parents and guardians are still trooping to the Free SHS Secretariat with concerns. Parliament has ratified an agreement between Ghana and some 121 countries. According to Energy Minister Boakye Jako, the agreement is to help promote solar as an alternative source of power generation. This came to light as the House Parliament resumed sitting Tuesday. Government has appointed the president of the Kolebu Senior Staff Association, Charles Palm, as a mediator in the ongoing saga between its management and Unibank. Mr. Faye Palm is confident the issues will be resolved before the end of this month. The Scholarship Secretariat has granted full scholarships to all continuing senior high school students of Dintra Obuasi community. The scheme, called the Hardship Scholarship, according to government, is in line with measures by government and stakeholders to aid the restoration of the town. Those are our major news highlights. Remember, we're live on 3FM 92.7 and you can follow our live stream on 3news.com. Up next is the big one. Welcome back. Now, the Ghana Police Service has launched investigations into claims by an ex-robber called Eja Yao that some government officials and other individuals are behind the supply of illicit arms to robbers. A statement issued by the Director of Police Public Affairs, DSP Sheila Kesi Abeye Bachman, said the police is pursuing a lead from an interview the supposed reformed robber granted to a YouTube channel, Kofi TV, which was also published on Ghana Web. Right, so let's get on to Skype now and speak with counter-terrorism expert Emmanuel Kuting, who is joining us now. Mr. Kuting, thank you extremely. We're grateful you could join. Very interesting times. The police is following up on a lead in an interview granted a YouTube channel that suggests that armed robbers are supplied arms by some unnamed government officials and individuals. Must this person be taken serious by the police service, especially with such allegations, which we don't know whether there are bases or not?
Well, thank you for having me, and good evening to Ghana. In fact, like you said it, indeed, we are living in very interesting times. And I believe that by the natural law of justice, he who seeks justice might equally come with a clean pair of hands. But unfortunately, our investigative body have not purged itself in the eyes of the very people that warranted their existence, that natural course of justice. You see, these are very serious allegations that should concern everybody. Rightly so, coming from the person who is making such an allegation. There's a saying that experience is always the best teacher. Since he is an ex-armed robber and he's saying this, some of us who are worried and could believe that there could be some element of truth in this allegation. But as it is at the moment, it's an allegation and it has to be investigated. But who does the investigation? Does the public really trust the body that will be carrying out this investigation? Just a couple of days ago, there was a very serious allegation that borders on corruption that warranted the president to even refer this matter to our investigative body. What happened? Look at the fallout from the video, the audio tapes that we had to analyze a few days back. What has happened to that?
So, Mr. Kuting, you're referring to the back and forth of the allegations between A Plus and the Unibank and Kolebu management and all of that, and the fallouts from the police CID boss having been recorded and all of that. So you're raising these as points of doubt for which you wonder whether the police service can do a due diligent investigation into this wild allegation by a reformed armed robber?
It's not the issue of whether they can do or not. How for doing they can do. It's their duty to the country. And it's not only the A Plus case. There are series of cases. You remember the cocaine that turned into powder in their exhibit room and stuff like that. So I think the police need to take very concrete steps to purge itself of this tag the public has placed on them, because if care is not taken, everybody will take steps to protect or arm his or himself. And I think it will lead to anarchy. You just realize even the Second Amendment in the United States of America, where everybody can go to the counter and have a gun, and the ripple effect. That is gradually what we are heading into. I feel that we have very hard-working police men and women in uniform, but there are very few bad notes, and the majority are not willing to give away this bad note in the service. And I also feel that there is complete loss of discipline in the service.
Right, Mr. Kuting, I'll have you hold briefly. We'll move the discussion a bit further into strategic areas. But the Central Regional Police Command has launched Operation Hit Hard in Kaswa and surrounding areas to flush out criminals and the increasing spate of armed robbery in the area. According to the Central Regional Police Commander, COP David Ampabeni, the police has put in place a detailed strategy which includes the use of the biodata of criminals in the area to flush them out. Well, this week alone, the Kaswa police rounded up some 16 armed robbers, 5 of which engaged the police in a gunfight Sunday night. 11 others were arrested around the Liberia camp, the Walantu and Lampe areas, all around the Kaswa vicinity. So how viable could such an operation be? Operation to use the biodata of criminals to flush them out. Let's quickly get onto the telephone line as well and speak with another security analyst, Nana Usu-Sechere, for some answers. So, Mr. Usu-Sechere, I know you've been following the discussion we're having with Mr. Emmanuel Kuting in relation to allegations by a reformed armed robber who is suggesting that government officials and some individuals have been supplying robbers with arms. This brings into question a complex network of criminal activities. Now, the challenge has been put at the doorstep of the Kaswa police, which is saying that it is going to use more advanced technology, including the use of biodata of criminals to flush them out. So here we are. We have a problem with the supply of arms to the robbers. Now we also have the need to use technology to track criminals down. Do you get the sense that our police service is up to this task?
Well, thank you very much, Stephen, and very good evening to my other colleague on the other side. It is interesting to see how this analysis of lawyers, politicians, big men, supporting armed robbery in this country? I think it's very interesting. For me, the first question I ask myself is, how viable is armed robbery to a politician who, for me, is a businessman and is looking for a more productive and illegal way of making money? How viable is armed robbery to how is it very viable, in that regard? I mean, to any person who is seriously looking at making money in this country. So I find it very, very interesting how they can throw their weight and money and resources into an entity which, one, is illegal, and you cannot be guaranteed of the profit that you actually put yourself into. So I find it very, very questionable.
So Mr. Secretary, if I get the drift from what you're saying, you have doubts about the authenticity of these allegations we've lost Nana Secretary. We'll try and bring him back on the telephone lines, but lucky enough, we still have Mr. Emmanuel Kuting on the telephone line. So, Mr. Kuting, I introduced the dimension of the police using advanced technology, biodata of criminals to flash them out, and you rightly heard Nana Secretary really raising questions about whether or not such allegations could be trusted. That is, the linkage between politicians, government officials who might be looking for ways of making money, whether armed robbery will be a viable entity for them. So do you get a sense that the intelligence in this might be flawed and the police might be chasing the wind?
Well, let me supply my friend this information. The end result of armed robbery is not always about going to making money. We are all here when we lost an honorable member of parliament through armed robbery. So to me, maybe the young man in question, I kind of listened to the transcript of what he was saying. Maybe the allegation that top politicians looks questionable. Maybe he was trying to refer to people with some connection with authority. But let's look at it in this perspective as well. You see, any allegation of this nature must be taken serious. We are in this country, we see policemen who have been trained, involved in armed robbery. In the past few years, how many convictions have we had? So if we can get policemen who are involved in armed robbery, nothing is far from the truth. But with the biometric aspect, with the regional, the Central Regional Police Commander's assertion that they are trying to track biometric data of these criminals and what have you. In the first place, do we have a proper data bank that we can actually match these criminals' biodata to? No. That's why the NIA project, I've always called that government should take it very serious, and police can rope into that and use that as a starting point. Right. Even as we speak today, Stephen, the fingerprints, we still use the old method where we use our fingers on the wood, one after the other. And I am just asking, as a country, that we portray ourselves as the gateway to Africa, how much does the modern equipment cost? Yet we have resources to give our MPs to lie in V8. So I think that is a matter of priority. Right. And we must begin to take our security very serious, because security is a very expensive enterprise.
Right. Mr. Emmanuel Kuting, we're grateful for your time. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Kuting. Emmanuel Kuting is a security analyst, and he joined us there. We're grateful for his time. Now, 12 fishermen suspected to have been engaged in light fishing at Azizanya in the Dangbe East district of the Greater Accra region have been arrested by the Fisheries Task Force.
The Adan area of the coastal region of Ghana has remained a hot spot since the enforcement of the ban on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing activities at the beginning of the year. Fishermen in the area have been divided over whether to accept or defy government's directive, leading to frequent clashes. At least more than 5 separate fishing gangs have been intercepted between April and September. In the early hours of Monday, the task force from Azinzanya intercepted yet again another boat engaged in light fishing. All 12 crew members were arrested and handed over to the police at their downfall. Outboard motors, the boat's christened blade, the fish consignment, fishing nets, a generator and others were all impounded and also handed over to the police. Preliminary investigations revealed the suspects are natives of Anyakpo near Adan in the Adan East district of the Greater Accra region.
You're also watching News at 10 and listening to us on radio 92.7 in Accra. We'll be back with more news. Welcome back. Now, the Minister of Communication, Ursula Owusu-Ekufo, has defended the National Communication Authority's decision to sanction some radio stations for breaching their authorization permit. She was reacting to remarks from the minority in Parliament that the move was an attack on freedom of speech.
The Communications Minister described as unfortunate comments that the exercise was politically motivated.
For anyone to even suggest that there may be some motivation other than strict application of our laws, I think is most unfortunate. And I would chide the ranking member of the Committee of Communications for his comments that he made in that respect and ought to be withdrawn.
Though she agreed that some of the fines were high, she said it was not an attack on freedom of expression.
We must make our laws work. If every agency did perform their obligations that way, very soon this country would also be like the Western world, which we all so happily cite.
The minister warned any TV station currently enjoying digital test transmission, which does not live up to its obligations under the laws, would not be migrated onto the digital platform and would have their operations seized.
Now, meanwhile, the ranking member of the Communications Committee of Parliament, ABA Hussaini, in an exclusive interview with TV3's Evelyn Tengma, says he sees nothing wrong with the minority statement issued earlier.
Certainly, I don't disagree with the minister. But this statement by no means suggests we are not working together with her office and then department and agencies under her, including the National Communication Authority. We are. But we are reacting to an objective situation, a situation in which we find a grave threat to the freedom of expression. And as our statement pointed out, we are not against the NCA enforcing regulations within its ambit. No, far from that. Indeed, like I said, we have a duty to help the NCA enforce regulations. But where we find enforcement measures exceeding a certain limit, they express concern that the closure of 131 radio stations, to revoke the licenses of 131 radio stations. Everybody will see this straightforward as a matter of concern. These regulations have always existed, I agree. But the enforcement has not gone on the way we all expected. So if we were to enforce all the regulations at one go, to slap sanctions, some of which this regulation was passed in 2008. And so if you are going to go back and calculate from 2008, radio stations that have not met their obligations from 2008 and slap them and say within 30 days, you must honor those obligations within 30 days. If you listen, the minister herself said it was excessive. I'm sure she herself agreed that it was harsh. So something which the minister herself agreed is harsh. So why should something harsh be meted out to media practitioners? Especially when we are talking about nothing but the freedom of expression, the right of expression, which is a cardinal principle of our democratic process.
Onto the telephone lines and speak with the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Mr. Suleiman Brahima. Mr. Brahima, thank you extremely. We're grateful you could join us. So the minority holds the view that these sanctions, although aimed at bringing sanity to the airwave, also more like introduces an issue of monetization of free speech. You don't think so?
Well, I find it difficult to understand that position because I believe that those who are advancing that argument are not denying the fact that we need, as a country, to operate with laws that we ourselves have, passed. We are not talking about a piece of legislation that was introduced during the military era, where you would say it was maybe by decree and hasn't been repealed and therefore is being applied. We are talking about a law that was passed by representatives that we have chosen and about Parliament for that matter. I think that the minority side in Parliament, some of them may have even been part of the Parliament that passed this particular law. I do agree that the fines that have been imposed are quite crippling, and I actually doubt if any particular radio station among the affected ones would be in a position to pay the fines that have been imposed. However, the solution is not to blame the NCA. I believe that the solution is to propose a mechanism that bring about some amicable resolution. And that is why I'm happy that the GIBAD, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, has adopted the attitude of wanting to meet or planning to meet with the NCA to have a dialogue on how the matter can be resolved. I don't think it's about saying that freedom of expression is under threat, because Stephen, that I live and breathe freedom of expression. But I've also made the point that if we are not careful as a country, this whole phenomenon of licenses being given away and people who hold the licenses refusing or failing to comply with the conditions of the license can eventually also become a very significant threat to freedom of expression and the whole thing about free speech that we talk about. Freedom of expression is important. Free speech is important. And therefore, having multiple radio stations in the country is important. But we do have to recognize that the airways is a public resource and a scarce public resource. It has to be managed judiciously and prudently to the advantage of every citizen. And that is why if we have had an NCA that has failed over the years to implement the law that, is mandated to implement, and now we have a new management and a board that says, well, we must do a house cleaning exercise. The fact that the previous board and management did not act doesn't mean that we shouldn't also act. And I think, as I have said, the way to go is not this confrontation or this attitude of blaming the NCA or trying to politicize it here and there, but to say that given that this is the first time such a massive exercise has been conducted, can we have a dialogue of trying to find a solution to the problem? Because if the NCA had sat down without doing anything, I believe it is the same parliamentarians who would question the NCA. Why are they sleeping on their job? And so on and so forth. Institutions must be allowed to work. And when we realize perhaps the law that is being applied is not a good law, it is the same parliament that has to act. So I really can't understand why some of our, MPs have taken the position that it's about monetizing free speech and so on and so forth.
So the arguments have been made that in reference to Article 162 and 163 of the Constitution, for example, requiring licenses and all of that appear to be a bit of a drawback from the original intentions of the freedoms of expression granted within the Constitution. So, like you said, what if no amicable point is reached between the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association and the NCA, especially in relation to Article 162 and 163 of the Constitution?
Well, I think it's important that when we are reading the Constitution, we don't end at 162, 163. We need to proceed to 164. And I have made the point that, yes, the Constitution talks about no limitations should be imposed in the establishment of mass media, whether radio, television, newspapers, and so on and so forth. But again, the same Constitution recognizes that when it comes to the airways and frequencies, it is something that has to be really regulated and managed well. Otherwise, what then will happen is that tomorrow, if I have equipment to set up a radio station, I decide that I'm going for, let's say, 90.5 FM megahertz, and then I'm operating. So somebody maybe in Latibiokoshi tunes in and it's radio gold. Somebody in Medina tunes in, it is another radio station, but it is still at 90.5. The same thing can happen. Maybe I tune into a television station. This is supposed to be TV3, but then it gets into another step altogether.
Ibrahim,
I don't think that is the way to go, and I don't think that is what our minority MPs are saying is the best for this country.
Right. Mr. Brahima, we're grateful for your time. Thank you extremely. And that's where we wrap up with News at 10. I'm Stephen Enti. We're grateful that you made time to join us. On behalf of the crew here, good night. And for those of you who left your dial at 3 FM 92.7, thank you very much.